भव शङ्कर देशिक मे शरणं 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 विदिताखिलशास्त्रसुधा जलधे महितोपनिषत्कथितार्थनिधे हृदये कलये विमलं शरणं भव शङ्कर देशिक मे 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 शरणम्।
ॐ यं ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं ह देवम् आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। ॐ गुरुब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Namaste to everyone. The topic that has been given to me is Avasthā-Traya-Viveka. Now this is the ultimate actually in Vedanta, because through a single prakriya, through a single technique or method of knowledge, and through existential data available to us, to all of us universally, they are going to bring us the knowledge of the self. They are going to offer very powerful pointers and even use a kind of logical analysis in order to help us understand the fact of consciousness, which is ever present, which is always there, which is never non-existent, which you don't have to seek for. You just have to realize it, to know that it is ever there. It is the reality of our being. It is that which never changes. It is the eternal one. So the fact of consciousness is brought home to us in such an analytical way through this Avasthā-Traya Prakriya. It's a Prakriya, it is a technique, it's a technology in itself, and it's a powerful pointer to something which is available all the time, everywhere. Only thing is, we have to be sensitive in mind. We have to be pure at heart so as to acknowledge the reality as it is at any given moment of time. The fact of consciousness is there. Our minds are clouded. This is the whole problem. So prakriyas like these, methods like these actually clear our mind and throw insight into reality which is ever shining. So this Avasthā-Traya-Viveka is actually part of Mandukya Upanishad, which is the shortest but most profound of the Upanishads. And it has been extensively commented upon by Shankaracharya. And it offers us this very powerful technique for reaching non-dual truth. Advaita itself means the reality of non-duality. Consciousness is non-dual. But if you actually open your eyes and see the world around you, it all is not just dual, it is made up of so many things, and duality is only natural in our perception. There is always the subject and the object. So then what are they talking about? Where is perception non-dual? Where is reality non-dual? So what they are trying to tell us through all these prakriyas is, you are seeing only the appearance. Appearance means name and form. You see, anything that you see around you, it has a more fundamental identity, which we miss out. Because our eyes are, as it were, only taking in the name, form, shape, the attributes at the most, but not the actual thing, not the existent reality there. If you take a chair or a table, it is actually wood in a particular form, but we don't think of it like that. We have given such an identity to chair and table and invested so much into that identity and using it for definite purposes that we are not able to get out of this name and form framework and enter into the reality of wood. So this is what they are trying to tell us, that consciousness is the unchanging existent reality of this universe. It is existence itself. Not that it is existing. It is that which renders anything existent. It is consciousness itself. Not that it is conscious. It makes everything perceptible. It renders everything conscious. When you become aware of something, then that thing exists for you, isn't it? So awareness, which is, you can say, conscious by itself, is what is called consciousness. It's the only thing which is conscious by itself. Please check this out and see. It's all a first-person research. Check this out and see that only awareness is conscious by itself. Everything else is functioning on borrowed consciousness. It is not conscious by itself. It becomes conscious due to other factors. It borrows consciousness, as it were. But awareness, it is the starting point of life, of consciousness, because it is conscious by itself. So, and of course, it is bliss. When you clear the mind completely, then only we understand the different levels of happiness. And this is the ultimate level of happiness. Pure being, pure existence, and pure bliss are one and the same thing. They are synonymous, you can say. So this is the non-dual reality which the Upanishads are actually talking about. But in our ordinary perception, we just miss it out because, reality is so close to us, you will not find a path to it. Through pointers like these prakriyas, you can intuit the truth that already exists. But a regular path to it you may not find because it is so close to you. Your very awareness, it is a picture of your true being. It is so close to you. You are that, in fact. And everything else you are identified with through the thought process. But it is not the reality of your being. That is why if you crush thought, you remove thought, you lose your identity with it. So that flimsy is our so-called sense of individuality or personality or whatever you call it. But so true is our existential awareness, the reality of our being. You are ever, always aware. Please check this out and see just now. Occasionally identified with the body, mind, and through the mind, through the thought process, you are identified with the body, with the world of objects. Without the thought process, that identity stops. But aware, you are always. That doesn't require a thought process to make you understand this. Awareness is so fundamental to your being. So this, in various ways, it is being pointed out. In fact, if you see the 4 Mahavakyas of the Upanishads, they are actually telling you the identity of your true being with Brahman. Awareness with pure consciousness, you can say. Ayam Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, Prajnanam Brahma. All of them are speaking of this non-dual knowledge, that the reality is pure consciousness, Brahman, and it is ever present here and now. And you don't require anything to reach it. Just touch reality intuitively by clearing your mind. And that is the truth of Advaita, is ever there for anyone to realize. So I will go directly into the analysis of the 3 states of our everyday experience. For us to find this out even more forcefully, it will appear even more obvious what we are discussing. So you see, these 3 states of our everyday experience, which are called Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti. The waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. Now they are universal. They are common to all of us. And all that this Upanishad does is to analyze these 3 states, this existential data, and with just this much, they will arrive at the truth of the Atman. So let us go through these states one by one. Let's try to understand them. The first state is what we call Jagrat. Jagrat is the waking state, in which we are all just now in that state. We are hearing this talk. So this is a state when your senses are fully active, the mind is fully active, and you are taking in sense perceptions from the outer world. The sense objects through your senses impinge on your mind and give you knowledge of things around you, objects around you. So this is the Jagrat state, and the waking self or waker is given the name Vishwa in this Upanishad. So why is it that each state, the self is given a different name? Actually they are being very precise, because each of these selves behaves quite different from the others. We'll find that out. You can check it for yourself and see. This Vishwa, the waker, the self in the waking state, he is actually invested in the outer world because of the activity and the overactivity of the senses and mind. He is outward bound, outward turned. So this is the nature of the waking state. So we feel we are getting knowledge of the outer world and we are entirely awake in this state. This is the normal perception. But when we actually go further into this Upanishad, we will see how wrong we are. That this is actually speaking from the Jnani's standpoint, from the awakened person's standpoint. All these are just dreams of shorter and longer duration. But from the standpoint of an ordinary mind, the Jagrat is the waking state. And then the second state is what is called the dream state or the Swapnavastha. So this is a state which itself will give us a lot of knowledge about our true being, because the beauty of the Swapnavastha is you enter into it and yet you have conscious perception in it, and without reference to this same body. You may not at all refer to this. You may have a completely different body in your dream. Say, I always tell my students that maybe you became Virat Kohli in your dream and you don't mind it and you're very happy with that identity. You don't check it. You don't think it's wrong or how did I get this identity? No, you just accept it. You can have a totally different identity, but the same I continues. Your conscious perception continues in the dream state without reference to one particular body. Isn't this remarkable? You get a totally different identity and it's okay. You're fine with it. And not just that, the dream state is absolutely real to you until you wake up. In fact, the dream is Jagrat for the dreamer. And he holds a completely different identity and he's fine with it. He never questions it in the dream. If you questioned it, you would wake up. So we are capable of this state where we are a totally different self or being. That's why, the dreamer self is called Taijasa. Now you see, it gets more and more interesting, this Upanishad actually. This dreamer self, Taijasa, Tejo Mayatva Taijasa. It is through the light of your awareness that you see your dream. And who has spun the dream? You yourself. Your mind has spun it. It is totally unreal, but it is absolutely real to the Taijasa, the dreamer self. And he has a totally different identity and he's fine with it. And he does not doubt his dream until he wakes up. So this is the nature of the dream world. You are happy dreaming. And nobody is scared of their dreams unless, of course, it's a horror dream which they didn't expect and suddenly got into it. Then it's a different matter. But dreaming has all these characteristics. And so the Taijasa is a very interesting chap, actually. He reveals a lot of how our mind works. Now, actually speaking, the Upanishad is not interested in the content of your dreams. What it is interested in is the nature of the Taijasa, the dreamer self. How he switches his identity and is yet comfortable with it. How he does not doubt his creation in that state, although it's a completely dream world. And how he has invested himself into it. These are all the points to ponder about when it comes to the Swapnavastha, the dream state. Then we pass onto the third state. Every night after your dreams, many of which you forget, so you think you didn't dream at all. But of course, most of us dream. After a good night's sleep, we have dreamt, but we have maybe forgotten it. Then you enter the Sushupti state, which is the state of deep sleep. So this is another very interesting state which has definite characteristics. Please see, in this state, in your dream state, the senses were closed, but the mind was active and it was spinning the dream. But in the Sushupti state, both the senses and the mind have shut down. Check and see if this is true. Don't fall asleep to check it, but think and see. In Sushupti, the senses have closed down, the mind has also shut down. And yet you have an experience. There was somebody to record that experience. What is the experience you have? And this is again common to all of us. It's called Sukha Maham Aswapsam Na Kinchid Vedisham. Means I slept happily and I did not know anything. Now, who recorded this experience? How do you know you slept happily? I slept like a log. What a restful sleep, we say, after a bout of deep sleep. And I did not know anything. So, who did not know anything? Who recorded this utter blankness of deep sleep and yet the restfulness, peacefulness you got from it? So, consciousness must have been present in some way to make this kind of a record, isn't it? Now we are going into deep waters. Who recorded this state of deep sleep? How did you know this experience? So that is why the Upanishad points out and says there has been an invariable common factor in all these three states. And these states have been the variables. There's an invariable passing through these three variables. It's your own I consciousness. It is pure consciousness, awareness has always been present. The states, as it were, moved over you. So, this is actually called the Anvyay Vyatiriki Yukti. You are finding the unchanging common factor in the midst of variables. It's a kind of logic. So, the only invariable in this particular context, with regard to the three states, can only be consciousness. Check and see. That is why that is called the fourth, or you can say, apart from the waker, dreamer, and deep sleeper, there is something which has recorded these three experiences, which gives continuity. You see, the very same person who was the waker is the person who was the dreamer. Again, it's the person who went into the state of deep sleep and then woke up to notice all this, to be able to think about all this. So there has been an unchanging common factor, and that can only be consciousness. Nothing else, because it's neither the waker, dreamer, nor the deep sleeper. So this is how the Mandukya Upanishad comes to the fact of consciousness, but it is not to be argued about or logically cogitated like this. It is to be realized. Sa Atma Sa Vigneha, the Mandukya Upanishad mantra, the seventh mantra, very important, very profound. It says this is to be realized. How to realize this? By working on our waking awareness, by deepening it, by removing its conditioning, its investiture into the thought process. Literally, it means by sadhana. It is to be known, it is to be realized, and that is how one comes to this very profound knowledge which the Mandukya Upanishad is giving us. So let me once again summarize this for you, because it is so important a part of the Upanishads. Mandukya Upanishad is, how it is spoken of in Uttarakhand. They say, Mandukya ekameva alam, mumukshunam muktaye. The Mandukya one alone is sufficient because it has the power to liberate the mind. One who can impute consciousness in all these three states will arrive at the truth of the self and will understand it is by nature non-dual. It is the underlying reality of all these three states of experience. It is the underlying reality of all these three states of experience. It is the underlying reality of the waker, the dreamer, and the deep sleeper. It is pure consciousness. So let me summarize this for you. The first thing is, we are analyzing states of our everyday experience. We are not doing something fantastic or not creating something. With just existential data available to us, we are going to analyze it thoroughly. And the Upanishad, by doing this, what does it arrive at? It arrives at the knowledge of pure consciousness, the fact of pure consciousness. You see, this is the unique standpoint of Vedanta. I was going through consciousness studies, the textbooks which they study for consciousness studies, and I found that they are only dealing with the relational, structural, you can say, representational models of consciousness, which means consciousness of something, of an object. So when you study consciousness which is already invested in the mental process, in order to get knowledge of the object. You study a completely different aspect of, we call that, the mental awareness, which you find in your mind. You are not studying pure consciousness in itself. Vedanta is studying pure consciousness in itself. In fact, it's the only literature in the world and the only philosophy. Actually, it's not even a philosophy. It is existential analysis, existential truth. The truth of this existence itself. It is studying pure consciousness in itself. It is coming to the fact of this pure consciousness, and it is not studying consciousness invested in the mind, in the thought process, as consciousness studies are studying. So this is the vital difference which you come across when you study Mandukya Upanishad. You can understand this very clearly. You see, they are even studying the third state, that is the deep sleep state. Tell me which philosophy of the world is studying Sushupti, the way they are studying it. So they are studying pure consciousness in itself. They are touching rock bottom, if you ask me, the final truth about existence. And so this makes it a very interesting study, how they analyze each of these selves. In the waking state, how the self is, what are his characteristics, what is his nature. In the dream state, that very self takes up another identity and assumes everything in the dream to be true, its own, and at the same time, the Taijasa is being lit up by the same awareness. It is through the light of that awareness that he spins the dream world and gets involved in it. And then he passes on to the deep sleep state. Then he's called the Prajna. The deep sleeper is called Prajna. And he's another very interesting chap because he has his senses and mind totally shut down and yet experiences deep restfulness and peacefulness. So then what is the common factor in all these three? It can only be consciousness. There is one invariable passing through these three variables. In fact, these selves, the Vishwa, Taijasa and Prajna, are actually appearances in the substratum of consciousness. It is called Turiya. The word Turiya is not there in the Upanishad, but it's there in Shankar Bhashya. But in the Upanishad, it's called Chaturtham, the fourth state, as being apart from these three states. And that is the reality of the human being, human consciousness, as well as this very existence. Because it is unchanging, it is ever present, never absent. And it is the underlying reality of all appearances. So this is how the Mandukya Upanishad comes to the fact of the self. Here I would like to point out to one or two things which are very interesting. See, in your everyday experience of this waking state also, you can clearly understand, you identify through the thought process. Identification is a matter of choice. But awareness is not a matter of choice. You are ever aware. In that awareness, you can choose to identify with something. See, this body does not come and say I, but I say I am the body. Please ponder over this and see. There is no common factor between my I sense or the I cognition and body. Body is a perfect object of my perception at any given point of time. That's what medical science is about. It is studying the body as an object. The psychological sciences are studying mind as an object. So then who's the subject? How do I manage to mix up object and subject and claim I am the body, I am the mind? So this is happening, this is called adhyas, superimposition. It is the cause for ignorance. It is actually, if you sum up Advait Vedant, it is to do with understanding adhyas and understanding these prakriyas, existential inquiry, which will lead you to existential awareness, the fact of pure consciousness. So how this adhyas actually happens is a real mystery. So that's why we attribute it to Maya or whatever. The whole point is this: how do I mix up subject and object when clearly in my own perception they are two different entities? And until I perceive them as different, I will not penetrate into Advaita. That is why you see finally all this wonderful, profound, hardcore philosophy, it resulted in a culture which even undermined body consciousness. Because that is not me. The body is a perfect object of my perception, and only to identify with it is to insert my true being. This is the Advaitic standpoint. Actually, it results in this. So the whole point is to understand the depths of our own being. And when we know the glory of the Atman, that we are of the nature of pure consciousness, which is the very crux of existence, which is bliss itself, then am I going to go about begging for a little experience, for a little happiness in the world? So finally, we manufactured a culture which was bent upon this, of sheer freedom and independence, of the glory of the human soul, which put down everything before that. So this comes from Advaita, this comes from the Upanishads. This is the very heart of reality. And that is why Advaita has been able to refute a whole lot, all the philosophies which came to oppose it, which came to refute it. Advaita managed to refute all of them because it takes its stand on the strength of this, the supreme reality of our true being. The Nayayika argument against this very concept of Avasthā-Traya, which are in the Upanishad, is that, well, you are inferring the state of Sushupti. This is the strongest, one of the strongest arguments against Advaita, that you are actually inferring the state of Sushupti when you say Sukhamaham asvapsam na kinchid vedisham. You are not experiencing it. This problem only occurs when your awareness has not touched that point where it is completely detached from the mind. If through sadhana, through samadhi, whatever, in any way, if one is able to do that, one sees, no, it is not inferential, it is experiential. You experience the state of complete blankness. You experienced, you were there. That's why you could make that record. So somewhere awareness has blossomed completely into its true nature. And that is when this kind of analysis becomes an experience with the sadhak. And that is why this mandukya alone is enough to get you into the state of self-knowledge. So everything depends on the clarity of our mind and the power of our sadhana. Yeah, as long as the mind is dense, all this will appear like theory or some philosophy at the most. This is no philosophy. This is the nature of our existence. How can we not be interested in it? I am teaching a whole lot of students in India. A cross-section of them are philosophers. Some are pursuing science. Some are in different subjects. But all of them agree that this is the most scientific, most interesting subject, because it is to do with me. How can I want knowledge of an object before knowledge of myself? How can I not want to know who I am in reality? What is my unchanging satta, essence? What is my true being? How can anyone not want to know that? So this is what Vedanta is about. It is the science of sciences. As you find in the Mundaka Upanishad, Brahma Vidya, Sarva Vidya Pratishtham. It is the support and basis of every other Vidya. How can you ignore it? Consciousness is the ever-existing substratum of this world of manifestation, this universe. How can you not want to know that substratum? If, in fact, to justify any Vidya, to understand it to its depths, you require this knowledge. It will take you, even if you pursue physics, the physical sciences, to their very depths, it will take you to the fact of consciousness. So we can't ignore this great knowledge which is there in our Upanishads. I would like to bring to you the mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad, the 7th mantra, which is most powerful. I remember even when I was in college, I once studied this Mandukya Upanishad and especially wrote down this mantra in my diary because it just hit me. It is talking point blank about the nature of our being. So how does it go? Let me tell you the mantra itself. Anta pragnam Na anta pragyam, na bahish pragyam, na ubhayata pragyam, na pragnana ghanam, na pragyam, na apragyam. It's using the language of neti neti actually. You can only describe consciousness by showing what it is not. Na iti is neti. It is not this, it is not this. Na antapragyam. It is not that which illumines the internal world, the subjective world. Na bahish pragyam. Nor that which is conscious or invested in the external world. Na ubhayata pragyam. Not that which is conscious of both or which renders both conscious. And na pragyam na pragyam. It is not that mass of sentiency or awareness, something beyond that, and not even insentiency. Then what is it? How to know it? Its very nature is adrishyam. It cannot be seen. How can you see it with the senses? Tell me. Your very senses are being brightened by that light shining behind the mind. How can you think of it? That's why it's even achintyam. Because your very thought is being illuminated, the vrittis of your mind are being illuminated by awareness shining behind the mind. How can the vritti reveal that awareness? So this is how it goes. Adrishyam, avyavaharyam. It is non-transactional. You cannot bring it into any level of transactional activity, although it is only due to it that all transactions are happening. Then agrahyam, it is ungraspable by any means. Alaksham, it is uninferable. You can't infer it in any way. Achintyam, you cannot think about it. It's beautifully put in the Kathopanishad also. Na sandrishe tishtati rupamasya na chakshusha pashyati kaschanenam. Anyway, it is not available even to any thought modification. It is so subtle and yet so obvious. And then avyapadeshyam, it is indescribable by any means. But a powerful clue is given. It is ekatma pratyaya saram. It is the very source of your I sense or I cognition. This I sense, aham pratyay in us. This is a powerful clue to know pure consciousness. In fact, this is Raman Maharshi's way, isn't it? The koham, the way of who am I, is actually this. It is, you can describe it like this. Ekatma pratyaya saram. It is the very essence of the I thought, or aham sfuran, the throb of I within you, or the I cognition. It is the essence of that. And prapancha upashamam, it is actually the basis of prapancha, all of this manifestation. Even these three states which we have been studying, they rest on this fact of consciousness. And it quietens all this manifestation. The truth, the nature of truth is like that. It supersedes everything. And you will come to it despite all the variation that you see on the surface. It is Shantam. It is complete peace. Shivam. Absolute auspiciousness. It is Advaitam. It is the truth of non-duality. It is Chaturtham. It is the fourth state, apart from the three normal states of your everyday experience, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. Chaturtham Manyate. It is known as the fourth one, Sa Atma. That is your true being. That is the real I in all of us. The same thing in different forms, under different names, manifesting. And Sa Vigneyaha. That is to be known or realized. See, the word realization is very powerful. Realization means something is already there. You so train your body, mind, senses that you see what is already there. It is not a creation. It is not an invention. It is not a discovery. It is not a concoction. It is a realization. You awaken to the ever-present fact of true being. So this is the powerful seventh mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad. Why is this prakriya so special? Through this mantra, they are telling you how to discriminate through this Avasthā-Traya, the three states of your everyday experience, and come to self-knowledge. Why is this particular method so powerful? To refute duality, because all these three states are appearances of that very same consciousness. You don't stop at finding out that this is the fourth. You don't stop at that. You understand, just like how the examples given in Vedanta are very interesting. Just like how you have a whole lot of ornaments which you like to wear, but finally they are all gold, isn't it? Gold in a particular name and form. Are they anything apart from gold? Our whole problem is the name and form has become dominant in our minds. We lose sight of the gold. This is the whole problem. If you give things the importance they deserve, you will see reality as it is. So there is nothing called an ornament apart from gold. Whether it is a earring or a necklace or a ring, is it anything apart from gold? It is gold in a particular form, with a particular shape. Because it serves a particular purpose, you have given it an identity in itself. It is nothing apart from gold, actually. So also this manifested world is nothing apart from Brahman. Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, these three states are established in Brahman, in consciousness. And the waker, dreamer and deep sleeper are nothing but the surface aspects of your own consciousness, of pure being, Brahman. So this is why this kind of a discrimination is posited. That is why this kind of a prakriya has been, it's a pointer, please see. It is pointing out to you, see, this is how you're thinking, but reality is like this. And it's within your experience. All of us experience these three states of Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti every day. But we never analyzed it like this. The simple reason why we don't analyze, we don't investigate into this is due to our strong identifications with what we are not. These identifications don't allow us to understand the truth of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. In a very clear head, Advaita Vedanta can be the only reality of this universe, because it is your pure being. It does not require anything else to prove its existence. See, this is the only reality, the fact of your awareness. It does not require something else to provide proof for this. It is Swayam Prakash. It is self-evident in itself. You just clear your head and you will see it for what it is. That is why it is called aparokshanubhuti. It is direct knowledge. It is unmediated knowledge. In Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, every sentence hits me like anything, because I usually study it after my meditations. And you see this simple sentence, Prapancha mithya drishyatvat, he says. Ghatavat. What he's trying to say is the world is an appearance. It is mithya. It doesn't have independent reality because it is an object of your perception. Drishyatvat. When you make something an object, you require a whole lot of factors to make it evident, to make it perceptible to you. The simple theory of perception will tell you this. Only the supreme subject is self-evident. It does not even require the nod of the mind to know that you are aware, that there is a source to that awareness, which is pure consciousness, the only thing which is conscious by itself. So the fact of your awareness or pure consciousness is so obvious in an unclouded mind that Advaita, that is why it establishes itself in its own glory by itself. Truth, Vivekananda used to say this, truth does not bow down to anything, ancient or modern. In fact, society has to bow down to truth or die, he says. The nature of truth is like that. It is Swayam Prakash. It shines by itself. Do you require a torch to reveal the sun? No. In fact, the sun charges up all your solar torches. So the whole point is this. It is in the light of your awareness that you perceive whatever you perceive of this world. So there is a source to that awareness. That source is called the Atman, pure consciousness, and the way to it is the Upanishad. This is the glory of this literature. It provides us the Shabda Praman, the actual method to go into the knowledge of the self. Through prakriyas, through meditative techniques, through pointers like the one which we just discussed, they take you directly into this knowledge. This knowledge can only be direct. It cannot ever be indirect because it is closest to us. It is through it that your mind is functioning. It is through it that your senses perceive the objective world. So if I have knowledge of everything in the objective world, from quasars to all the stars and everything, from quarks to quasars, but I don't have knowledge of my own true being, what is the point? So that is why we require this precious literature absolutely. It was Vivekananda's great effort that Advaita should become poetic and practical, and all these great ideas should come into our everyday lives, and it should become practical psychology in the lives of our people, and that is how you make Advaita living. Don't think it is a dry philosophy meant for sadhus who are in the Himalayas. Is your consciousness a dry something which you can't intuit where you are? How can it ever be? It developed there. Okay, the ambience there is suited for this, but it is an existential fact in all of us. In fact, if you stop identifying with your psychological drama, you will find Vedanta is the only reality of our being. And that is why it is ever practical, ever possible, and it is never non-existent. It is the only changeless reality of being. And that is why Advaita, Vivekananda in fact predicted it would be like, in the future it will be taken up by whole masses of people. It will become part of our thinking because it is the reality of life. What is the difference between consciousness and life? When consciousness conjoins with prana, vital energy, it manifests as life. So the heart of life itself is consciousness. How can we not study it as a science? And you see the amount of contribution Vedanta has to make even in consciousness studies. Nobody has studied pure consciousness in itself. They are only studying it, as I told you, as representational, relational aspect. But here in Vedanta, you have not just the study of pure consciousness, but how to attain it. You can only attain it, you have already attained it in fact, because it is your own true being. But if you turn your mind towards it, you actually live in it and you express it through all your actions. So the whole point is this, catching hold of Vedanta. And that's why I'm very grateful for the organizers of these lectures. You have brought a gamut of Vedantic knowledge together in Advaita Academy, which will be very fruitful, because in Uttarakhand they even say this, that one discussion on Vedanta also will not go waste, because it would have created the vrittis in your mind required for this knowledge. So this is a very powerful system of thought, and by bringing all this knowledge together, you have done a great service to mankind. I can vouch for this, that the Vedantic knowledge is the most powerful way to change the human personality structure, because it is knowledge of reality and truth. And truth has this power. It will corrode. It is a corrosive substance, in the sense it will corrode its way through untruth and take you to complete fulfillment of life. The nature of Advaita is like that. So thank you once again for having me here and making me part of these discussions. I pray to the Supreme that He bless us with this knowledge firsthand, in the first person, that it becomes part and parcel of our lives. I think that is the highest fulfillment of human life. Thank you very much. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
विदिताखिल शास्त्र सुधा जलधे महितोपनिषत् कथितार्थनिधे हृदये कलये विमले शङ्कर देशिक मे शरणम्
भव शङ्कर देशिक मे शरणं भव शङ्कर देशिक मे शरणम्